Hi, welcome to your Checkup. We're a patient-facing medical podcast where we bring conversations from the doctor's office to your ears. I'm Ed Dulesky, a family medicine resident in the Philadelphia area.
And I'm Nicola Rufo. I'm a nurse.
And we're so excited you can be here with us today. On this podcast, we try to bring medicine closer to its patients, and hopefully by the end, you'll learn something about health for yourself, a loved one, or a neighbor. All right, what are we going to talk about today, Nick?
We're talking about two things today. Some summer safety fun. So first we're going to talk about sun protection, skin cancer, and then we're going to talk about a topic I'm very passionate about, water safety.
That sounds great. All right, so sun protection is important. This week we're spending some time down at the beach, and it made us think to do this episode. So when you think of sun protection, what do you think that is the main thing you're trying to prevent?
Skin cancer.
Yeah, skin cancer. And for our vain people out there, aging as well.
Can't have aging. And all of this kind of seems like, okay, like none of what we're about to say is a hot take, and stay out of the sun. If you're in the sun, wear sunscreen, which we'll talk more about. Right. But 1 in 5 Americans will develop skin cancer at some point in their life. So it sounds like the people need a reminder. Yeah,
it's the most common type of cancer. And so it definitely deserves a lot of time and attention, which we're going to give it today. Awesome. So there are a couple essential protective measures that you can take. One of them being seeking shade when we're trying to reduce our chances of sun exposure and skin cancer. So between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., the sun's rays are the strongest. And so
best time to tan.
It's the best time to tan and the worst time to get skin cancer. And so avoiding the sun during those times is probably the best way to go.
Mm-hmm. So what if you're not avoiding the sun, or you're like us and we're on the beach between those times?
Yeah, I mean, realistically, I know like we got to walk the walk here, I guess. Realistically, you should be wearing sun protective clothing. And I remember getting lots of lectures in med school about this, that like you'll see dermatologists out there, they are wearing lightweight clothing, long sleeve shirts, pants, wide brim hats, and sunglasses, all to offer them extra protection from the sun. But there's one big one that, is not clothing at all. That is a big conversation. What are we thinking about here?
Sounds like we're talking about sunscreen.
We are. And so can you tell us a little bit about, so who needs sunscreen?
Everybody needs sunscreen, regardless of your skin tone, age, gender, whether you think you don't need sunscreen because you really don't burn, like I thought for my entire adolescent and most of my adult life thus far. Except in the recent years, I've been really good about wearing sunscreen all the time, but that took me a solid 30 years to get to that point. So
right. And like you mentioned earlier, 1 in 5 Americans develop skin cancer in their lifetime, which is really disturbing. But not only does not using sunscreen lead to that outcome, but using sunscreen also helps premature skin aging, which has been in the zeitgeist.
And any of the girlies who want to shoot up their face, freeze your muscles under there to prevent wrinkles, that's all good and fine. But you can't do that and then not wear sunscreen, because you can't fix it from the inside and then have bad skin on the outside. Botox can't fix your skin. So
yeah. So when you're thinking about choosing the right sunscreen, what sorts of recommendations, and all of this conversation has been brought to you by the American Academy of Dermatology. They have a website. This is their frequently asked questions portion of their website that we're actually just diving into for our episode here. So when we talk about what type of sunscreen, what characteristics it should have, what things do we think about?
So the 3 main things that you want to look for when you are looking for a sunscreen, first is broad spectrum protection. Everyone talks about the UV rays, but they're UVA and UVB. The kind of adage is that UVA is for aging and then B is for burning. And then one that's SPF 30 or higher, which really on the scale of SPFs, like 30 is not really that high.
No.
It's pretty minimal. You'll still get a tan. That's what we use. And then also looking for one that's water resistance for obvious reasons. If you're out at the pool, the lake, the beach, whatever, you're in the water, and then obviously sweating.
Absolutely. And when we talk about actually using that sunscreen, it's important that you use sunscreen every day on exposed skin, regardless of the weather conditions, because even in cloudy weather, 80% of the harmful UV rays can penetrate and get to you. One thing that was really interesting reading this article is that most adults need about an ounce of sunscreen to cover their body in all of the sun exposed areas. And that is about the amount of a shot glass, which if you really just take the bottle, turn over and you're squeezing it into a shot glass, feels like a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
It feels like how my dad applies sunscreen. The man paints his body.
Well, good for him. But don't forget that you have to apply it to the tops of your feet, your neck, ears, and the top of your head for the friends who are not having as much hair on the top of their head recently. Skin cancer also can form on the lips. And so people often will find themselves using a lip balm or a lipstick containing sunscreen with an SPF of 30 or higher. And one key thing when it comes to sunscreen is reapplying. And they offer some good guidance on how often to reapply.
Yeah, the recommendation is every 2 hours. Seems reasonable. I mean, I feel like when we're on the beach and stuff, it seems always like you put your sunscreen on when you get to the beach or the pool or wherever, when really the recommendation is to do it about 15 minutes before you're outside.
Right.
And then it seems like it's being reapplied. If you're like, oh, my shoulders feel red or my shoulders are hurting, but you're already burning when you're happening. So if you just do it every 2 hours, you can prevent that.
Absolutely. And if you're doing activities like swimming or you're running around and you're sweating a lot, you also should probably reapply after that too, like any topical medication. And so that's something that probably is underdone.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, 1 in 5.
We're guilty of that. We'll be better tomorrow at the beach.
We certainly are. Tomorrow will be better. And so like we were talking about understanding these UV rays again, UVA rays are for aging. They prematurely age skin and they can cause wrinkles and age spots, whereas UVB often leads to the burning type of rays, which are higher risk for skin cancer, which is something we're always thinking about. We were talking about sunscreen a lot, and it does come in all different shapes and sizes. It seems like there are lotions, creams, gels, sticks, sprays, lip balms. I think it's all personal preference, and that's what the American Academy of Dermatology was saying too. As long as it gets on your body, the best type of sunscreen is the sunscreen that you actually use. What about this interesting tidbit here about the effectiveness of SPF and how much of the UV rays it actually blocks? Yeah,
so kind of going back to what I was saying about the 3 things to look for in your SPF and the minimum SPF being 30. That's because with an SPF of 30, that's blocking 97% of the UVB rays, which are those burning rays.
Yeah. Which is crazy because higher SPF numbers actually don't block sunscreen 100%. I mean, if you're already blocking 97% of the UVB rays, there's only 3% to go. And so using the same amount of SPF doesn't actually accomplish that goal. But what using a higher SPF does do is it gets you more protection with less volume. Because we all, I think, tend to underutilize the amount of sunscreen that we should use. But using a higher SPF, 40, 50, 60, higher, you can use less to be able to get the point across to your body.
And no sunscreen protects 100% from even SPF 100.
Yeah, doesn't do it.
Doesn't mean that it's blocking the sun 100%.
Absolutely. So what about thinking about sun protection in babies and toddlers? Tell me, what's the word on sun protection 6 months and under in a baby?
So the general kind of recommendation for the little guys is just to avoid completely keeping them in the shade, getting your little baby a cute little sun hat and sunglasses that they'll take off in 3 seconds, but they're still super cute and you can try.
And then after that, once you get infants are older than 6 months, using a particular sunscreen that's for children is the best option. And so, And in terms of infants, there are special types of sunscreens, those that contain zinc oxide or titanium dioxide, which may be less irritating for sensitive skin.
Yeah, the zinc is like the SPF I use on my face every day has zinc in it.
Oh, okay.
Which I like specifically because I like have eczema and I'll get it like around my eyes and it doesn't bother that. So
Does other sunscreen bother it around your eyes though?
it does.
Oh.
I know. I'm a delicate little petunia.
That's getting clipped. And, it sounds like when you're using all this sunscreen, you're going to be going through it quite a bit. And so there's going to be more sunscreen in the house and you'll have to buy more. But the good news is that sunscreen usually retains its original strength for about 3 years. Or you should just look at the expiration date to make sure that you're not applying something on your skin that has been expired for 4, 5, 6 years.
Yeah, once the sunscreen gets, because I feel like we've all had a bottle or a couple of like old sunscreen laying around in like your beach bag from 10 summers ago. And it kind of gets that like yellow, gross, like consistency and color.
Yeah.
No good anymore.
Not good anymore.
Okay, so Ed.
Mm-hmm.
That's so weird to call you that.
You can call me Eddie.
Eddie. Yeah. Okay, so Eddie, tell us, what if one would be concerned about their vitamin D? And we know that we get a lot of vitamin D from the sun, but we're protecting ourselves from the sun.
Right.
What's the recommendation for that?
So if you're
How do
asking
we navigate that?
Yeah, if you ask a dermatologist, they'll continue to say avoid the sun. And there are a lot of people in our society who are vitamin D deficient. And so there are recommendations from the AAD to get it in your diet and other forms rather than solely relying on getting it from the sun. Using this much sun protection can actually impact how much vitamin D you have. So it's something to think about. And we're talking about the normal, average, healthy adult. There are certain circumstances and chronic conditions where vitamin D is very important. And obviously, for all of this, you should consult your own doctor. Now, in terms of what happens when this fails, because no one's perfect, and at the end of the day, many people get sunburn. And this happens to me at the beginning of every season. And because my skin is very fair, I'm not Italian like some people in the room. And so the idea is immediately you should get out of the sun and get inside. But you've helped me in several other ways. Like you've given me aloe. We've kept my skin moist.
We now have aloe in our house because of him.
Yeah. And drinking a lot of extra water. And it's very soothing. And as for someone who's had a lot of skin peeling and from sunburn, that bad. The word from the American Academy of Dermatology is to avoid popping the blisters because they can lead to infection, which isn't great. So you also should probably prevent that skin that was burned from getting burned again. And so staying out of the sun after you get burned is important as well. And I think that's the word on sunscreen for now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sunburn and protection. So SPF 30 is the way to go, or up.
And maybe after everyone listens to our podcast, next time all of these statistics come out, it'll be less than 1 in 5% of
maybe
Americans.
1 in 6. Maybe 1 in 6. That'd be great.
I know. If Peloton doesn't sponsor us after our last episode, after I gave them so much free advertising, we're canceling the subscription. Just kidding. No, we're not. Haha.
I'm not doing anything like that.
So funny.
Yeah, so in keeping with our summer fun theme and summer safety, splish splash, splish splash. What? Turns out water's dangerous.
Water's dangerous. Now we're going to talk about water safety.
Why is water safety even important?
Well,
who are we thinking about here?
Well, everyone, but mostly children, because drowning is the number. It's going to start right off with a good, scary statistic that drowning is the number 1 cause of death for children ages 1 to 4 years old.
That's disturbing.
That's, 25%.
I grew up with a pool. It was around all the time. And now we've got little ones.
And I feel very strongly about this and very passionate about this because I was a swimmer my whole life. I was a lifeguard and I gave swim lessons.
Yeah.
And just teach your kid how to swim.
Yeah, we're going to get into
The moral of this podcast.
That's a conversation that you should have with the pediatrician, because there are different benchmarks and milestones to hit. But you probably start teaching your kid how to swim earlier, but we'll get there at some point in this episode. It seems like from reading from the healthychildren.org, from the American Academy of Pediatric, that most of the time it's unexpected. Now, I don't think anyone expects someone to drown, but most of the time it's unexpected. And I'm seeing a statistic here. As many as 69% of drownings among children age 4 and younger happen during non-swim times. How can that happen?
So the non-swim times are the times when the whole family isn't outside by the pool or the lake or wherever you are. And then a child will drown because they will fall into the pool, be out where they're not supposed to be. And then no one's out there. No one's watching.
Yeah, that's that. I'm seeing here that children can drown in water as thin as 1 inch, which is very thin.
Yeah, it's like a puddle.
It's a puddle.
The bathtub, that's a big one.
Bathtub, toilets, buckets of water after rain, all things that come up that are not related to the swim time. Because, I mean, we listed off a couple there. Like we listed off a pool. We listed off a lake, a pond, a river. These are places I could anticipate, but they're all shocking when they happen. And it's frankly disturbing. It's also not limited to children 1 to 4. I mean, I remember the very first day of this residency year, a child got flown in who was 14 or 15 years old because he slipped to the bottom of the pool and didn't know how to swim. And it's just a terrible thing. So we're all doom and gloom here that it's a very dangerous thing. It's something that can affect children and toddlers age 1 to 4, but also people of any age. But the American Academy of Pediatrics discusses a few different ways to be able to counteract this. In terms of people around, what's the best way to go about preventing this from happening?
So if your child, like you know that your child can't swim or that they're not a strong swimmer, be within arm's length with them. That way, like if they do start to go under, you're there and you're touching them and there's no kind of like delay in anyone getting to them. They always recommend having or making a point person to be like the watcher of the pool. Kind of acting as like the lifeguard. I've like had people in the neighborhood I grew up in who have had pools who have like asked me or my friends who I would lifeguard with if we could like come over for like a party they were having with their family, like as the lifeguard. So like people do that. Yeah. And they would like pay us for a couple hours. And then
Also, feel free to go off.
So using life jackets, so specifically near lakes and rivers is what healthychildren.org recommends. I know that when life jackets are in kind of like an open body of water, a lot of the times that's for, like anything were to happen, like specifically with you and like whatever vehicle you're on in the water, like the boat or the jet ski or something like that. And then you're like not conscious and then you're floating in the water. So there is a lot more that goes into that specifically with like an open body of water when I was doing my digging.
So it's not necessarily for everyone, or it shouldn't be the primary thing that we rely on.
Yeah. Is this where I'm going to get into my life jacket rant?
Sure.
Because I love talking about this. Yeah. So where do I start with the life jackets?
Well, maybe it's not a substitute.
It's not a substitute for not knowing how to swim.
Yeah.
And this is not a parenting podcast. However, I will die on the hill that you should focus on teaching your child how to swim and not just like every time they're in the pool, throwing on a swimmy or putting them in a float. Like especially like if you have a pool or someone in your family does that you're there a lot, like get the kid in the water, teach them how to swim, because there will probably be a time, or there could be a time, where they're in the water, they get in the water when they're not supposed to be, something happens, and then they don't know how to swim because they always have a floaty on. And then the time that they don't, something bad is going to happen. So,
yeah. And I mean, your point here is echoed by the American Academy of Pediatrics, citing several different studies that say that water survival skills training, or essentially learning how to swim for children aged 1 to 4, reduces the risk of drowning events. And so, I mean, you're spot on the money there. It's no substitute. And there are classes, right, that people can attend.
Like swim lessons?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can really start your child in swim lessons. There isn't really like an age limit. I taught like really, really young kids, as young as 2. Like I taught the lowest class for a while. They were called the Guppies, and they were so cute. These like little kids. It was like the first time ever in a pool. But like they, at least, I mean, they weren't like strong swimmers, but like at that point, you're at least teaching your kid like how to float and how to like keep their head above the water. You know, we're not like Michael Phelps out here, but you learn how to like navigate the water if you're in it. So you can do that. There are also a lot of like parent and kid swim lessons if the water is kind of like a scary thing for your kid, and you know that's something that you guys want to do together. There is also, I don't know if we should talk about this because I don't know if this is on here, like the infant survival rescue
classes
or like infant swim rescue.
Oh, there are, and
that's like.
There's like an article that comes out every year about this because it's such a hot topic.
Yeah, it's like a relatively newer thing or something that's like more popular, and you can like look online for videos, and it looks very jarring because it's essentially just like throwing your kid in the water and then teaching them how to float on their back. But then they'll do it with the kids like fully dressed. They'll do them in like winter clothes, things like that. I like to think that my dad was the inventor of this because he purposely dropped me into our pool in our old house when I was like 6-7 months old in my first summer. And then I just floated up to the top and there we go. So
you made it out.
Yeah. And then someone obviously stole his idea. So
yeah, I think, I don't think the AAP for children under 1 has a comment on it from what I was reading, but I think anywhere, it depends on the milestone, and that's a conversation to have with your individual pediatrician. I guess I was going to try to steer the conversation to unconventional bodies of water. You have to empty your buckets in wading pools, or
what's it called? Like the cover for the pool. If you don't have like a hard one and that like fills with water, if it rains during like the fall or something.
Yeah, that's a risk. Or coolers with melted ice, large water bowls for pets.
Like another thing for pools, which this is like probably not a hot take, but apparently is because 1 in 4 children are drowning, but put a fence around your pool. Yeah. Put a lock on your fence.
And there are certain specifications for that. Like the latch has to be 54 inches from the ground.
Yeah.
And it has to close on its own. This sounds familiar because this is how our setup is. The fence has to be at least 4 feet high, and the slats have to be more than 4 inches wide. And all of those things together actually have shown in research to reduce the risk and prevent more than half of all swimming and pool related drownings, which is a start. We went from 1 in 2 to 1 in 4. There's obviously some work to be done here. The bathroom was kind of crazy to me.
Yeah, the toilets are crazy.
But it's not to help them along. It's like you're literally making sure that they don't die.
Yeah, and you're like, okay, the tub is one thing. We all know don't leave your kid alone in the tub, but like the toilet?
And you're falling head first into the toilet, and then that's it.
Yeah.
Jeez. Nothing's safe anymore.
Yeah, they did talk about putting like a latch or a lock on your toilet seat, which seems extreme, but it happened, so.
Maybe that's what has to happen.
Yeah.
I will say that this website was pretty evasive on giving which milestones need to be hit that you need to swim. So now that we reviewed the website.
I mean, I don't think there are specific milestones.
Okay.
For each, like for when to start swim lessons and like when to kind of have your kid learn that skill. It was more of a going by the vibes, you know?
Yeah. I think that's what they were trying to set up here. So now that we kind of reviewed this website and this article that's available to all of our audience, if you look at healthychildren.org, they have lots of information about drowning prevention. And we heard your passion for this topic. What other feelings or thoughts do you have? No. Now we're just breaking out for conversation.
Well, I could really probably talk about this all day.
What else do you want to say about it?
I mean, I guess nothing that I haven't already said. Just get your kids swim lessons, teach them how to swim.
That's a big takeaway.
Yeah. Focus on your kid being a strong swimmer and not just throwing the floaties on them the second you get to the pool or whatever.
Yeah. One take.
And also specifically, I think that they almost, not so much with the pool, but with like at the beach and like in the ocean, I think that like the big floaties, especially like the ones that are on your arms and then especially the ones that like wrap around your whole torso and everything, can kind of actually hinder the kid when they're swimming. And then like if the waves are really strong or there's more of a current and then like they can't swim, then they really can't. I don't know.
So it's not so much like anti-swimmy, but it is anti-swimmy if it precludes you from learning how to swim.
Yes.
Got it. But people move along and like.
Again, this is not a parenting podcast, but.
I guess one big takeaway that I have from this article was the watcher and assigning someone specifically to that role. Mm-hmm. And I think about how distractible we are as people in our society and how that job is so important. And I mean, even if for a moment you pick up your phone and you're looking online and you're just
like the person who's watching, like their only job is to watch. They're not on their phone. They're not going over to the grill to see how the burgers are.
How
they're not going. Looking. Yeah. Don't care about the sausages.
You're looking at the child who's near the pool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a big takeaway. And they do highlight in here, and I think I'll echo it, is that you should choose a responsible person. It should not be another child. Heck, it probably shouldn't be a teenager. But it should be someone that you trust because this is such an incredibly important thing. Mm-hmm. I guess I get worried about the scroll, plunk.
Yeah. See ya.
And that's it. I mean, that's not it, but I mean, it's like extremely dangerous.
And then, I mean, I guess like if you're in the situation where you are if you're unfortunately ever in the situation where somebody has drowned, obviously first thing would be to call 911. And then, I mean, hopefully you never are, but if you unfortunately are in one of these situations where somebody is drowning, first thing, always call 911 immediately as soon as you realize what's happening, whether it's you or you're like looking at someone and saying you call 911.
That's a huge one. Like, oh, someone call 911. No one does it.
That's always like a big thing in all of the like BLS and like PALS things that we always have to do. And even like when I just had to do this when I was a lifeguard and stuff.
And scene safety.
And what? Oh, scene safety. Yeah.
Step one.
And then, I mean, it doesn't hurt for everyone to learn CPR because, I mean, it's a pretty basic thing to learn, but also then like if you're in the situation and you don't know what to do, then it's more stressful.
Absolutely. Why not? Why wouldn't you learn?
Yeah. I mean, it's good for like every...
I mean,
not just drowning.
It could happen right. Like it comes up here in the drowning topic, but it could happen literally anywhere. Mm-hmm. And so I know like we get that training all the time. It's something we think about, but for someone who's tuning into our podcast just because they want to, I think like bridging that gap between like someone who isn't in healthcare to someone who is, that like you can learn CPR and it's something that you can do to save a life. Maybe.
I think everyone should, like for any situation, not just specific to drowning, but more so for the situation and, for the purposes of this podcast. Like I've even had parents, like when I used to babysit a lot when I was a teenager, like I have had parents ask me if I like had CPR and knew what to do. And I did at the time because I was lifeguarding and stuff, but it's something people think about.
All that to say, water sports can be fun, albeit seemingly dangerous, at least in this toddler age, super dangerous. But learning how to swim seems really important. Wearing your sunscreen when you're outside.
Maybe I'll come out of retirement and teach swim lessons again.
That would be really cute.
Okay, main takeaways, wear your sunscreen.
Yeah.
Teach your kids how to swim.
Boom. That's it.
Or maybe take a swim lesson yourself. A lot of adults don't know how to swim either.
That's true. And, there's a lot to be said about that. Having opportunities to swim safely or not having those opportunities. And so perhaps you never realize when the moment comes and you need to swim. It's a safety thing, maybe not even for leisure.
Yeah. Never too old to learn how to swim.
Just like you're never too old to learn about your health for yourself, a loved one, or a neighbor.
The neighbors. Take a swim lesson with your neighbor.
Take a swim lesson with your neighbor. All right, so this was our first attempt at doing this with video, and pretty soon we're going to have a functionality to be able to have you reach out to us and give us feedback. And please feel free to reach out to us or send us a message on Instagram. We're really active on there because we want to get our message out and help you learn something for yourself, a loved one, or
the neighbors.
So make sure you subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Follow our Instagram, your Checkup podcast. And most importantly, stay healthy, my friends, and wear your sunscreen and don't drown. I'm Ed Dulesky.
I'm Nicole Arufo.
Thank you and goodbye.
Bye.
This information may provide a brief overview of diagnosis, treatment, and medications. It's not exhaustive and is a tool to help you understand potential options about your health. It doesn't cover all details about conditions, treatments, or medications for a specific person. This is not medical advice or an attempt to substitute medical advice. You should contact a healthcare provider for personalized guidance based on your unique circumstances. We explicitly disclaim any liability relating to the information given or its use. This content doesn't endorse any treatments or medications for a specific patient. Always talk to your healthcare provider for complete information tailored to you. In short, I'm not your doctor.
I am not your nurse.
And make sure you go get your own checkup with your own personal doctor.